Well, good morning, good morning, good morning. I'm just a couple minutes late getting started. I guess some of you may have thought I'd given up, but it is 10 o'clock. Time for a live stream this morning. I usually do it at nights, but I wanted to do it today. And 4th of July, and say a few things, talk a few things. Then we're going to talk about the Bible again on principle of hermeneutics. We'll be talking about the first mention principle this morning. So I hope you're having a good morning. Happy 4th of July. Happy 4th of July to you all. I was reading my Bible a little while ago, and honestly, after I was reading my Bible, I sat there and dozed off to sleep. I didn't sleep well last night. I was up and down 2 or 3 times, back pain, different things, and didn't sleep well. And I got comfortable in my recliner, and I dozed off to sleep and woke up and realized it was already getting close to time for the broadcast. And so, anyway, we're on here, and I hope you are having a good day. Happy 4th of July, wherever you are, if you're celebrating with family or friends, if you're at home or if you're traveling. Some of you may be out of town, traveling and taking advantage of a few days off, and to enjoy this 249 years that we've been a nation. God has been so good to us to give us 249 years that we have been free, and that our forefathers fought for our freedoms and gave us the ability to have a nation that we could live and worship our God and raise our families and do the things that we do without any basically any persecution from the government. As far as now, we can travel from one end of the country to the other. We could get in our automobiles today and drive all the way to the other end of the country. And unless we did something wrong or had an accident, we'd never be stopped and asked where we're going and why we're going. Never have to show our identity. So we're very blessed. And not just the fact that God's blessed us financially and given us jobs and homes, and most of us live in a place that we take for granted. I've traveled around the world and been in many third world countries, and I understand that we are truly a blessed people. The world thinks we're all rich. They look at us and think we're rich, and for I guess measuring according to the rest of the world, other parts of the world, some people make a few dollars a day, and here we are. We live in a country that we're blessed far beyond our sometimes our own recognition. We take things for granted, just the ability to not just to work and to live free and to have nice homes and nice yards and places we can shop and we can go and come as we please, but also to be able to enjoy ourselves and do things basically without being bothered. And the greatest freedom of all is the freedom to go to church and worship. Especially here in the southern part of the country, in the South, called the Bible Belt. You can't hardly go a block or two without hitting a church. There's churches on every corner and churches right across the street from each other. Just churches everywhere, and we are blessed. We are really blessed. And so I hope you're having a good 4th of July, wherever you are and whatever you may be doing. I'm sure I saw a lot of you on Facebook this morning getting ready for cookouts today. Brother Alan Kidd, my buddy down there in South Carolina, he had a big old pork butt getting ready to go on the smoker and had it all wrapped up and ready and had it rubbed down. Hey, Brother Burton, I hope you're doing good, buddy, down in Salisbury. I wish you a happy 4th of July today, and for you that are traveling, that maybe are traveling out of town, please be safe. I know they said, I think the figure I heard yesterday was 75 million people will be traveling at least 50 miles from their house today. 75 million will be driving at least 50 miles from their house, and so there'll be a lot of traffic. So we're not going anywhere. My wife and I are going to stay here. We don't have any place to go today, and we've got everything we need. We've got food, and she's making lunch for today. And I stopped by the produce place yesterday morning when I went out and got some produce. So we got fresh tomatoes and cantaloupe, and I got her some I got me some peaches and got us some corn, fresh corn. So we've got everything we need. We got a refrigerator full of food and cabinets full of food. And so we're just blessed, and I'm thankful for what the Lord has done. We had a big day yesterday here in America, and I think today at 4, our president's going to sign the big, beautiful bill that he's been pushing for the last few months. And I think our Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, had said they'd been working on it for 14 months. And there's not everything, it's not everything that I like about the bill. There's some things in it that I don't like, and some things I'm sure that I wished had been in the bill. But they were talking, hey, Junior, Charlie Jr., man, I hope you're doing good, buddy. You and Irene, give my love to Irene. Got Burton on here and Charlie Jr. on here. Man alive, I feel like old times. Hope you guys have a good 4th of July, you and your family. But talking about the bill yesterday they signed, it was just a miracle they got it through Congress. It's a miracle they get anything done in Congress with as divided as we are. But I'm not saying that it's a perfect bill. There's some things in it that I didn't like, and there's some things I wished it had included. But one thing the president did say, and I appreciate him saying this, and I think that's why all the Republicans finally got on board, was that even though the bill's not perfect and there's still some things that's got to be fixed, he's only been in office, a little over 6 months. And but now that this main part is pushed, which was basically a package to make those tax cuts permanent, if they had not done that, you're looking at you're talking about some families having $13,000 tax increase. And so they made those tax cuts permanent that he did the first time he was the president. And then they opened up that drill baby drill philosophy of our energy, unleash the energy that we have. We have such a vast amount of energy, and so we're not just going to be energy sufficient, we're going to be energy dominant. And there's probably enough money in our energy and in the stuff that we could do here in America and our production that we could pay this debt off. And so I'm excited about that. And then also they paid for the improvements on the border to finish the wall that he started, and to give us, I think, 13,000 new ICE agents and patrol agents to help arrest all these illegal immigrants and get our border not just secure for now, but for the generations to come, for my grandchildren, your grandchildren. And then also a big budget for the military. Our military had gone down under the last administration, and we didn't even have enough ammunition, and things had really deteriorated. And a lot of things that were being planned for the future had been put on hold. And so the budget for the military was included, as well as part of a budget to launch the planning and the beginning of what he called the Golden Dome, which would be over our country like we helped build over Israel. The missile defense system protecting all the nation of Israel that has protected them from their enemies these last 10 years. And Reagan, you remember, if you were here when Ronald Reagan was president, if you remember that, he was the one that talked about the space defense. He talked about being able to defend our country from space, and people thought he was funny. They thought he was crazy about being able to use our satellites in space and to use it to defend us from the attack of enemy rockets and missiles. And they laughed at him. But now it's a reality that we have satellites in space now that help control our military and our GPS and give them the coordinates of where they need to be and things that need to be done, and can spot on the ground events that are going on. And now they're going to begin building. They've already got the contractors started. They're going to begin building the first stages of the Golden Dome over North America, which will protect not only the U.S. but Canada. I think Canada is going to be included. They're going to help pay for part of this. And then I'm not sure about Mexico and the Central America, but at least North America, us in the U.S. and our people are going to be protected by this new Golden Dome missile defense system that will protect us from incoming missiles no matter what part of the world they're launched from. And so all of this is included in the bill, and plus, there's no tax on tips and no tax on overtime, and then a break for senior citizens, and plus too, they didn't get all of the abuse and waste out of the system yet, and there's still some things in there that were some illegal immigrants and people that are here illegally are still going to be able to attach into the Medicare, Medicaid, but I think that will eventually be phased out as the president through executive orders and the Congress through other laws they can pass. And I think that's what I understand they're going to do. They're going to take this one big bill, and then they're going to build upon this now that they've got the main thing going. This will help launch our economy, to get our energy unleashed, to help bring prices down. The president's already got commitments on $15 trillion worth of industry to come into our nation, and he's not even finished signing the tariff bills and trade deals with very many nations, but there's about 30 some right now that'll be signed surely the next couple of days. And so I think once all this is unleashed, I believe it's going to be good for our nation. I'm not looking for a perfect nation, and I'm not looking for world peace anytime soon, because there'll never be peace until the Prince of Peace comes. But I am looking for some things to improve, at least to get us back to a place of where our streets are more free and more safe than they have been. Get rid of some of these the 20 million illegals that are pulling off of our tax money. I mean, I'm not being prejudiced. I mean, I've traveled and preached to people all around the world. Hey, Deanie. Hey, Pam. Hey, Charles Surratt. Hey, Sandra. Glad you all are watching. Hope you have a happy 4th of July. We're just kind of rambling for a little bit until I get started, giving a chance for everybody to get on here. But one of the things that I do have a problem with, and it bothers me, I've been working since I was about 12 years old, 13 years old. I went to work at a gas station when I was 13. And so I've been paying taxes, for 60, almost about 50 some years. I'm 69, so you figure it up. I've been paying taxes a long time. And I don't mind taxes. I don't mind. I pay the taxes everybody else does. And I've worked hard, and I don't mind paying my part to keep our military and our government. But I have a problem going and standing in line and, buying groceries and paying my bills and going and paying doctor bills and all, and sometimes struggling the last few years with cancer and all to pay bills. And then I see people that came across the border illegally, and they get free housing, free education, free medical. They get free Medicaid, Medicare. They get a free cell phone, and they get free transportation. They get flights into our country free, and basically never work. They keep having babies and get paid to have babies, and they get everything free. And me and them were living in $500 a night hotels up in New York, and and I know a lot of older people that can't even buy their medicine, buy their groceries. And so I don't think it's fair. So I'm really glad to see that finally they're going to get some things in order. And our land is a nation of immigrants, but they need to come in the right way. My family came here. We were immigrants. And my family, we traced the Harrisons all the way back to about the 1600s. We first came across on a ship. And so we were immigrants like everybody else. But we came here the right way, and not everybody in my family were good people. I got some horse thieves in my family, and probably got some pretty rough people in my lineage. But anyway, you know what I'm saying. I think those that come in, I welcome all the people that want to come here and better themselves and want to come here and work and add to our economy and go to our churches and be a part of our schools and our community. I welcome them. But just come in the right way. And so I appreciate our government and the bill that was passed. And I know that a lot of people didn't agree with it. And the Democrats, they're fighting everything. And then if the Democrats are in leadership, the Republicans will be fighting everything. And I know it's divided. But I'm just glad to see finally some things that are positive. And I believe this will be a good bill for our nation. There are some things I do believe they'll have to fix that maybe are not in the best interest of some people in our country. But so they'll have to fix it. But still yet, this is a starting place. So I'll tell you what you do. Instead of complaining about it, why don't you pray for our leaders? The Bible commands us to anyway. So I think that'd be a good place to start, is to pray for our leadership and ask God to give us a group of people that will seek God. And for the first time in my life, I've never remembered this in my life. I remember as a boy going to school, our principals would open up in prayer, and I remember prayer being a part of everything socially, but, as far as in society and school and things like that. But I don't never remember seeing as much God and Jesus and prayers in the White House and in our government, as we've seen now, to have to have people that have access to the president, and before he has a cabinet meeting, they pray, and to see congressmen and senators meeting, once a month or once a week at their meeting and have prayer, and to hear our Speaker of the House and to hear some of our secretaries and cabinet members talking about Jesus, and see our Secretary of Defense talking about his love for Jesus, and the President talking about how much he loves God and thanks God for keeping our troops. I mean, to hear this coming across the airways from our leaders has been almost unbelievable, because we've not heard anything like that in many decades. And I guess the last president in office that gave much reverence to God was Ronald Reagan, and he didn't profess too much about his own personal faith, but he did recognize the authority of God and the Creator. But as far as all the tribute and glory being given to God from leaders in our nation, I've not seen as much in a long time. And so it is encouraging to see and hear that. So pray for our leaders instead of complaining. And then do your part when there is an election, be it local or national. Do your part and vote. Then you have a right to complain, or a right to express your opinion. But instead of complaining, pray and vote and make changes. And some of you too that are younger, or maybe some of you that are even older, that have the opportunity, if you get a chance, run for office. Run for county commissioner, run for some office in your community, or run for a higher state office, and determine in your heart that you want to make a difference. Go somewhere to where you can hold an office and get voted in, get elected, and become part of the leadership in our country, and help make a difference and turn this thing around. So anyway, enough of that, but I wish you all a happy 4th of July. It's hard to believe another July the 4th is here. And I was thinking this morning, today it would have been my brother-in-law's birthday. My wife's sister just passed away. Her husband, Greg, I believe his birthday was the 4th, and they were married on the 4th. So they would have been married, I guess, over 60-some years now. And they're both in heaven. Buried her just a few months ago and buried him a couple of years ago. A lot of family gone today. I wrote a big article on Facebook this morning. I've been a couple of days this week. I started a couple of weeks ago, but I just finished yesterday. I just spent a lot yesterday. I wanted to get it done, and I'm going through pictures for the new book, and I had one large container left full of pictures, and I sat down upstairs in the bedroom in one of the nice chairs and pulled it out of the closet and just sat there and went through pictures and shed some tears and a lot of memories. Saw a lot of faces that aren't with us anymore. Saw Don Fitch and the Fitch family travel with me all over the country, was in meetings everywhere, tent meetings, youth crusades, camp meetings, and church meetings. And Miss Judy, she's still living down in North Carolina, and Melanie. But Melanie's, her husband passed away too, Doug, just a young man, went to heaven before his time, really. Just early, just going to heaven early, and he and Don are in heaven. And I saw so many preachers. I saw Mike Robbins' picture, Milford Biddle, and Tom Williams, and just began to think about all the men of God. I saw Dr. Ralph Sexton Sr. and Billy Kelly, and I was just, hey, Brother Aaron, I just saw so many pictures of people, and a lot of pastors. Brother Larry Beaver, I had pictures of Larry Beaver, and men in the camp meetings and the tent meetings we were in, and down in North Carolina. My pastor, Richard Horn, that married my wife and myself, and just saw so many pictures of people that are going on. My mom and my dad and my brother's wife and my sister's husband. I found a picture of my sister and her husband, and hey, Reuben. And saw my brother-in-law, Larry, my sister's husband. First picture I'd seen him in a while, and just brought back a lot of memories. And boy, this 4th of July, got a lot to be thankful for. But I was thinking I had more in heaven than I got here on earth. Got so many family and friends, and heaven's a mighty gathering of saints waiting on us. And I could almost hear them on the other side saying, "Come on, come on." And I miss so many of them, so many friends. Some that were closer than family, some of those preachers we served with, and so many that traveled with me and prayed for me, and God's been good to this preacher to let me serve God for all the years that I have, and to be able to do what I've done and see what I've seen. And, I'm coming down to the end of I apologize. I'm coming down to the end of the road. And I realize unless the Lord comes and unless God works a miracle, I don't have many more days left on this earth, and I'll be joining the ranks of those in heaven and see those that's gone home. But God's been good. I miss, hey, Brother Dave, hope you're doing well. I miss all those friends and many preachers that we spent a lot of time together. We traveled all over the country together. Thought about old Charlie Burgess, old preacher, old Brother Charlie. He was a businessman. He was a multi-millionaire. Used to see Burgess trucking lines, and the back of his trucks all had safeties in the Lord, out of the book of Psalms. And Charlie pulled my tent trailers. Well, his trailers wasn't even my trailers. He let me use the trailers for my tent, and every time I had a tent meeting, he would pull my trailers to every town. I remember one time, I guess I was what meeting we had in West Virginia. It was the one we were doing up, well, all the meetings in West Virginia, but one of the, I believe it was the first one. The first meeting in West Virginia was over in Huntington, and I was to preach at a preacher's meeting up there before the tent meeting was to start. And Charlie had a twin-engine plane, a P-Baron, twin-engine P-Baron plane, and he had had his pilot's license, but he'd lost them because he had, he didn't crash his plane, but he had to land his plane in Charlotte. He ran out of gas. Something had happened to his fuel gauge, and he ran out of gas before he got to the runway, and he landed on Interstate 85. And by the time the law got there and all the special officials and everybody got there, his plane was sitting on Interstate 85. And they were redirecting traffic, and I'll never forget laughing, looking at the pictures on the news. And they were asking Charlie, what happened? He said, I ran out of gas. He said, my fuel gauge showed empty, but I knew it was full. I showed full, but it was empty. He said, I thought it was close to full because we'd filled up not too long before he left at another airport. He had double tanks, and he said, I thought we had more than enough to get back to Charlotte because the gauge was showing we had fuel. But he ran out of fuel, and he had to land it on Interstate 85. There's nowhere else in Charlotte to land it. It wasn't any place big enough, and he couldn't make it to the airport. And so he landed right on 85. And one of the interviewers and officers, he was passing out tracts, and he was one of the greatest soul winners I ever knew, millionaire, but soul winner. He was passing out tracts to people that was stopping to watch this idiot with his plane sitting on the interstate. Hey, Brother Jeff. Hey, Danny. And he was passing out tracts, and one of the guys said, don't you realize you just landed a plane here on Interstate 85 and you're out here passing out literature? He said, why do you think I'm passing out literature? He said, God's been good to me to let me live, and I'm trying to tell folks about Jesus. He was the funniest fellow, but he was a soul winner. We went to the Philippines together. We did mission trips together. But he flew me up to West Virginia to the preacher's meeting when I was getting ready to do a tent meeting up there, and the guys were all for me bringing the tent. We set the tent up at Buffalo Elementary School there in Huntington. It made the Associated Press. I remember getting articles from all across the country. Friends, people that knew me from, I guess, 15, 20 states, sent me articles out of their paper, the Associated Press. It went nationwide, and we went worldwide. And people were sending me articles in the mail. Back then, we didn't have snail mail. I didn't have emails and computer. And so I was getting letters with a little article in it out of the paper. And but he flew me up there. And then when it got time to set up the tent, all the trailers, we parked the trailers at his distribution center there in Kernersville. He had one in Kernersville, one in Charlotte, then another one seemed like up north and one down into Florida. He had 4 or 5 terminals, but the terminal there in Kernersville, and sometimes I parked it at my house, had a place big enough when I lived down the country. But anyway, I told him when the meeting's going to be, and he always, either I had a man that had CDLs that he would approve to drive, put them on their insurance. Hey, Dwayne Johnson, you remember Charlie Burgess, I believe. Hey, Zach Sizemore. So Charlie says, no, so I'm going to drive the trailer this time, so I'm going to go up with you to the tent meeting. So I showed up and met him at the terminal, and we hooked up the trailer and got everything in it. And he threw a little cooler in the front of the cab of the trailer there, or the truck, and I was on the passenger side, and he was the driver's seat, and here we go up interstate, and we're trucking up I-77. He's running about 70 miles an hour, pulling that trailer with my 10 in it, and he's driving that thing, and he said, Brother Harrison, reach underneath the seat of my truck there and get that cooler. It's a little small cooler. I said, what you want, Charlie? He said, open it up. He said, the wife made us a couple of Mater sandwiches, what he called them, Mater sandwiches. He said, I want a sandwich. I said, Charlie, you can't eat a tomato sandwich while you're driving this truck on the interstate, because 77 going up through West Virginia is nothing but snakes and turns. He said, listen, he said, you just get me the sandwich out. And that, buddy, listen, the sandwich, a tomato sandwich with mayonnaise, after it sets a while, it gets mushy and drippy and starts dripping mayonnaise and tomato squeezings. And so he's got a pair of Bermuda shorts on, driving a tractor trailer 70 miles an hour going up 77. And I give him a tomato sandwich. He said, don't you want? I said, no, I'm going to pass. I said, I'm going to pray while you drive. He said, you pray, I'll drive. And he's driving, and Lord have mercy, he's running all over the road. He's eating that thing, and he's wiping his mouth like this and wiping all over his legs and his shorts. He said, you got anything to wipe with? I said, Charlie, there ain't a thing. There ain't a rag, and I ain't got a handkerchief. He said, under God, I ain't got nothing to wipe with. He said, I'm making a mess. I said, Charlie, you going to kill us both. He said, let me see your CDLs. I said, I ain't got mine. He said, then shut up and let me drive. Oh, Lord, I laugh about that when I think about it. And we got up there, and Lord have mercy, he was such a blessing. I thought about him. I saw pictures of that old truck and those trailers, and I thought about Charlie Burgess all the times together. He was such a blessing. He supported us. He was nice to my children. He was so sweet to my family. He'd give my children money. I mean, I'm not talking about $1. He'd give them $20. He'd give them $20 a piece, and they thought they was in heaven. They loved Charlie Burgess. And he just loved my family, loved me. And every time he'd come to meeting, he'd always give me money or a check. I know one of the meetings up there was in a meeting, I think it was in South Point, Ohio, and we needed more chairs. We was having the rock message, and we ran out of chairs. The crowd's getting so big, and I'd used all my chairs. I needed some. And he came in, and he said, how's the meeting? I told him. He's there at night. He said, you need some more chairs. I said, that's all I got. I said, I've had some that was broken. We threw some away, some that was old. But I said, yeah. I said, I probably need a few hundred more chairs. It wouldn't hurt. I said, I'm going to borrow some for the rest of the meeting. He said, tell them to unload that trailer out there and get everything off of it. So said, get in the truck. So we're going somewhere. So they unloaded the stuff we had. We had some tools and things, and they pushed it to the side and got everything stacked. And we shut the trailer up and hooked it up to the tractor, and he said, get in. So he got in, and we went driving. He pulled right straight in. He pulled right straight in to Sam's, and that's back when Sam's was already there. There was a Sam's in West Virginia. He found it, and he pulled up the front door. He didn't park. He pulled in front door and parked, and got out and walked in. He said, I want to see the manager. And somebody said, you can't park here. He said, I ain't going to be here long. He said, I need to see the manager. The manager came out, assistant manager, and he said, what can I do for you? He said, you need to move your truck. He said, I'm going to. But he said, right now I need some chairs. He said, what kind of chairs? He said, whatever you got, folding chairs. He said, well, how many? He said, how many you got? He said, I don't know. He said, let me look. And he pulled up the inventory. And I think there was 220-some chairs at that. It's either Walmart or Sam's. I think it may have been Walmart. And the guy said, they got 220 stuck up somewhere in the back. He said, they're here on the property. But he said, we'll have to get them out. He said, I want every one of them. And he pulled out a gold card or something. I guess it's American Express. He said, would that be enough to cover it? And they loaded up every one of those boxes of chairs, like 4 in a box. They came 4 in a box, and threw them on that trailer. And he pulled that trailer back to the tent. I had the guys come out there, and I said, guys, unload them new chairs and put them out. And he'd do things like that. He'd come into a youth meeting, and he'd give me $1,000, sometimes write $5,000, help pay for meetings. And then he'd soul win. He'd always get some guys to go out soul win. Every time he'd come into a meeting, he said, we're going to go out soul winning today and try to get folks to come to the tent meeting tonight. Hey, Miss Margaret. Hey, Jonathan. And I think about guys like that. And those men helped my ministry. I mean, I couldn't have done anything had it not been for men like Charlie Burgess and all the men that travel with me. I think about Neil Queen down in North Carolina, and Robin and Greg Lance that now works for Ralph Sexton there at Hearts for Hands, and has his own ministry, but Greg traveled with me for 10 years and set up youth crusades all across the country in high schools and civic centers. And those guys made it possible for me to accomplish what things God let me accomplish. And so when I get to heaven, if there's any rewards left, my wife's going to get most of them. And then these men's going to get a lot of them. They're going to get the rewards, because all the souls that were saved were possible because of men like Charlie Burgess, and all the volunteers that sacrificed, every man that drove a tent stake, and every woman that cleaned a chair, and every person that brought a meal, all the meals that had to be fixed for the volunteers, hundreds of people that had to work to set those tents up, and then all the youth crusades for every businessman that bought the pizza and the Pepsi to feed 1,500 kids. We'd feed 1,500 kids on Friday night. Last night at the crusade, we'd feed 1,500 kids pizza and donuts and Coca-Cola or Pepsi. And somebody had to pay for that. And sometimes Pizza Hut would give us a discount and sell us pizzas for $3 and $4 a piece. Large, as many as we wanted to buy. We'd buy 150, 200 pizzas to feed 1,500 kids. It's unbelievable. And I think about all that and all the thousands of souls. I mean, the trips overseas. I think about the one trip to the Philippines, and all this will be in the book, but the trip to the Philippines, and we preached 28 times in 10 days and saw 1,840 people come to Christ. I mean, I've got a picture, I think I posted one of them on Facebook yesterday, but a picture of a bunch of folks on a soccer field, sitting on the ground and in chairs in groups of 3 and 4. That was in a crusade I did in a soccer stadium in Cebu City, Philippines, on the island of Cebu. We had 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 people a night. And that one night there's about 600 saved, and that whole soccer field's covered with people sitting on the soccer field with a counselor in the Bible showing them how to be saved. I saw people walk across that field in crutches. People were pushed in wheelchairs, and they were crying and weeping and asking God to save them. And I think about those things, having written this book and now doing the final editing and now going through pictures and seeing all of this. And I'm just overwhelmed. Over 50 years of preaching, what God's let me see. And to be honest, my heart is sad that part of my life is over. Because I'd love one more time to pull on a tent site, watch the cars and buses and vans come rolling in and see the last big tent I bought, that big white and blue, and you see a picture of it on Facebook. It's the big white and blue with red trim, and it was 100 feet wide and 160 feet long, held about 2,500 people. And we saw God fill it up in West Virginia the last time I set it up before I sold it to Brother Ralph. His was destroyed in the storm, and I just bought this tent, used it one time, and I sold it to him. Let him use it for a meeting, and he liked it so good they wanted to buy it. Hey, son. And it was the prettiest tent I ever had. And I think about all the people and the sacrifices, and all the thousands have been saved. I'd love to do it again, but, all that's history, and thank God for the chance and the opportunity for the life God's given me. And this morning, I apologize for the tears, but God's been good to this preacher, and I praise him. He's been better than I deserve. And if there be any praise, if there be any glory, if there be any virtue, it's all because of him. It's all because of him. So, hope you have a good 4th of July today. If you're with family and friends. Hey, Brother Zane Official, thank you, buddy, for tuning in for a few minutes. We're just talking about old times and all that God has done. And looking back, I talked to Brother Matt. Brother Matt Anderson sent me a message. I had that sale Saturday, and I had some watches, and some didn't sell. And I thought about Matt. There's a man that came to the sale here that goes to church with you, and I can't think of his name to save my life. He's living now here, not too far from me here in Tennessee. And I asked him if he was going to see Brother Matt. He said Matt sent him a message and told him about my sale. Said you ought to go to Brother Harrison. He lives up there in Tennessee, and he's having a sale, and said you ought to go. And he came, and he bought several things. And I asked him, was he going to see Brother Matt anytime soon? I said, I wanted to thank him for just recommending you to come, because I got to meet a new friend. I made a new friend. and he's a member of that temple. And he asked me if I knew you, and I said, yeah, I know Brother Zane. I said, their church helped me when I was out with cancer. I said, they sent me a love offering. And by the way, thank you, Brother Zane. I'd like to come by and visit you one Sunday. One of these Sundays when I get back off the road a little bit, I want to stop by your church one Sunday and just have service with you and thank you and your church for the sacrifice of the offering y'all sent to us. It meant so much. And but I sent him a watch, and he sent me a picture of it. I guess it's Monday. Sent me a picture of it Monday. It's black and white. It's a 32-degree watch. It's really a nice watch. Never been used. Brand new, but it's probably 15, 20 years old, but in the box. But I bought it brand new. It's a collectible now. They don't make that style anymore. And Matt said he loved it. I hope he did. I hope he wouldn't just tell me that to make me feel better. But hey, it looked good on his arm. It's a beautiful watch. And I had a big watch collection, still do, got too many, but I used to love watches and still do. I wear the big watches. But so anyway, it's good to see you on here, Brother Zane. I'm proud of what God's doing down there at Temple, man. We was talking about Brother Teague Gross the other day. He's another one that's gone to heaven that I miss. I remember Brother Teague. I told that man that was here, I said, I always told Brother Teague, I said, man, I said, you look like a professional golfer. I was picking him because I knew he played golf. I said, you look like a professional golfer. You always are dressed nice and you always put together. And he did dress classy. He was a classy dresser and a great preacher. One of the best camp meeting preachers, I guess, ever come out of that area, just a real camp meeting preacher. And, he went to heaven early and all these preachers, so many. Now, I've been going through pictures this week, and I sat yesterday for hours and went through literally thousands. I know it sounds like I'm exaggerating, but I'm talking about thousands of pictures. And all the faces of people that I saw brought back so many memories, and how many of them now are no longer with us. Makes heaven sound a lot sweeter to know that there's people there waiting on us, and a lot of great men. And God privileged me at the right time. I came along at a time when many of those great men were just peaking out. I mean, they were really reaching their peak of the ministry, and some were ending their ministry, but I got to be with most of them, and called most of them my friend. I mentioned a lot of them in the new book. I just mentioned some by name, and some I go into detail, but J. Errol Smith was a great friend. Hey, John, Brother Williams out in Shelbyville. I appreciate. I got one of your families coming to visit me tomorrow. They come in today, but I'm going to take them. We're going to lunch tomorrow. John and Angela Clark are coming out of your church to come here and spend the weekend with us. And we're going out to Longhorn to eat lunch tomorrow. And their missionaries going to Mexico, I believe. And Angela got saved a few years ago there at the church when I was preaching. And I didn't know that, and she sent me a testimony, and that's going to be in the new book. But I love you, Brother John. You're one of my favorite piano players of all times. I love you, and, of course, I love Victory Baptist Church in Shelbyville, and the pastor, Brother Lloyd's just a dear friend, and the former pastor, Brother Jim Tedder, was probably as good a man ever walked in shoe leather, one of the greatest preachers I know, one of my greatest friends. He was a friend to me, I'm telling you. I love Brother Jim Tedder. Miss Tedder, they were so sweet and kind to me, and I don't know how many times I preached out there at Shelbyville. I preached dozens and dozens and dozens of times, had the old tent out there at Shelbyville. We set the tent up beside the church there, and I did revivals and youth meetings, and I've done the camp meetings, and I've done the Bible Literature Missionary Foundation meetings, and man, I've just been there for regular services, just preaching on a Sunday, and so I got a lot of friends there in Shelbyville, and my buddy Rick, he and I went hunting a couple times. Well, one time up in Kentucky, up on his property up in Kentucky, and that whole family, Rick and his family, they're such a blessing. Rachel and her husband and family, they follow me on Facebook. And so as I'm just talking, I was going to teach this morning, but I don't think the Lord's going to let me. I've just kind of enjoyed rambling this morning, talk about what God's let me enjoy through the years in the ministry, of all the friends and all the preachers. I got to meet the greatest of the great. I mean, J. Errol Smith and Percy Ray and E.J. Daniels, and Dr. Tom Williams just went home to be with the Lord just last year. And Dr. Tom Williams was a dear friend of mine. We preached out west quite a bit in a lot of prayer conferences. And Brother Williams called me just right after I found out I had cancer. He called me one day, and had prayer with me over the phone. And he was wanting me to come to Indiana to be with him and stay a few days and pray with me and pray me through this cancer thing. And he lived long enough to see me find out that my cancer had been under control and was gone. And he rejoiced with me, but he prayed for me every day. Dr. Tom Williams, the cowboy preacher. And we first met up over in Murfreesboro in 1987 in the tent meeting there. Brother Ralph and I took the tent. I set it up there in Murfreesboro, and I led the music, and we were only there 2.5 weeks, I believe, 2.5 weeks. And that was the meeting that Brother Ralph closed early. It was such a battle. There was such division there. It was such a difficult meeting. Brother Ralph struggled to preach, and I couldn't do anything right as far as the music, every song, everything we did. There was just so much tension. It was like pulling teeth. So Ralph finally closed out on Wednesday night and told me, he said, tear the tent down tomorrow and bring it home. Bring it back to Asheville. And so I was tearing the tent down on Thursday morning and was dropping the tent to the ground, getting all the stuff loaded on the trucks, and the car come pulling up on the gravels, and the horn blew, and I looked, and there's two ladies in the car, and on the passenger side was Mrs. John R. Rice, and she waved for me, and I went over and opened the door and knelt down beside of her and hugged her neck, and she said, Brother Harrison said, you can't take the tent down, you can't leave Murfreesboro. I said, Sister, I said, I'm just doing what the preacher said do. I said, he said it's over, told me to bring the stuff home, and I said, I'm just doing what he said, and she started crying. She said, Dr. John, that was her husband, John R. Rice. She said, Dr. John and I traveled all over the country seeking God in revival, and said we'd rent a house for 2 or 3 months because we knew we was going to be in town for a while because you couldn't do revival in a week. And so we would take a house and rent it for 2 months, 3 months for our family, because they had this huge house full of girls, you remember, and Joy Martin and others that were married to preachers and did the conferences years ago, women's conference, Joyful Woman's Jubilee. I still remember those. And Mrs. Rice been in our house several times and been to my church many times, and she was a dear friend. And every time I was in the Murfreesboro area, matter of fact, the last time she came to hear me preach was down in Shelbyville at Victory Baptist. It was raining that night, and she fell in the rain and got all messed up and tore her hose, and she was all muddy. And the lady that was driving her said, Miss Rice, let's just go back home. She said, no, I'm staying. Hey, Miss Phyllis. She said, I'm staying. She said, I come to hear Preacher Harrison preach, and said, I'm going to stay. She said, mud or no mud, hose or no hose, I'm going to stay and hear some preaching. They brought her into the church, and the preacher's wife and some of the ladies got her all fixed up and cleaned up. And she came in, she had a little cut on her knee, and they got it fixed up, and she came in and sat. She always supported me. If I was somewhere close by, if she heard about it, she'd come hear me preach. But that day I was tearing the tent down in Murfreesboro, she was sitting in that car crying, and she said, Brother Harrison said, you can't take the tent down in Murfreesboro. She said, we've lived here all our life. And she said, it's the only place we've ever been that we've never been able to see a move of God in this town, not a real revival. She said, we've seen it all over the country, but she said, we've never seen it here in our hometown. And she said, here's what she said. She said, it'll take at least 6 weeks to get the church ready for revival. She said, it's going to take us at least 6 weeks to get the church ready for revival. My heart was broken. I was weeping. She was weeping. I had prayer with her, and she left that day. And she drove off the parking lot, and we took the tent back to Murfreesboro, back to Asheville. And I'll never forget that day as long as I live, hear Mrs. John Rice say those words. And that was back then. That was 38 years ago. 38 years ago. And I wonder what Miss Rice would say today if she was living in today's church. Thinking it would take 6 weeks back then to get the church ready then. You think the church would take 6 weeks to get it ready now? Maybe 6 months. Maybe 6 years. The church is such a mess. We've gone so far. I mean, we didn't have a nationwide move of God when I was at my height of traveling and preaching 450 times a year. We didn't see nationwide revivals, but it was nothing to hear evangelists like me and other evangelists, nothing to hear meetings extended all the time. There was 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 week meetings, and there were several tent meetings going on. A lot of guys had, Craig Edwards had a tent, Phil Kidd had a tent, I had a tent. My brother up in West Virginia, can't think of his name now, my mind just went blank, but he had a tent. I mean, I could name a dozen people, if I think about it, that had tent ministries, and tents were just normal. Tent meetings were normal. Phyllis, your dad, Brother Massengill, Gil Massengill, he did tent meetings, not just here in the country, but he did meetings in Mexico and all over the world. He traveled and did meetings. And he and I was of that generation. We saw a great move of God. We saw a lot of people saved. And we saw the church back then that still had the fire of God and the power of God. And Sunday morning services was like revival. Sunday morning services was like camp meeting every week. And but then they started doing away with revival meetings, and everybody started trying to have a camp meeting in their church, and all kinds of Bible conferences, and so many things trying to take the place of what was genuine and real. And preachers got to trying to work it up instead of pray it down, and things changed. I watched it change. I watched it go from when I was young to seeing men and the preacher bowing in a graveyard. The church I was saved in had a prayer place right on the other side of the graveyard in the woods. And we went from meeting out on the other side of the graveyard in the woods, hearing those men pray for my drunken daddy. Hey, Brother Roger, hear them call my drunken daddy's name. And then when my daddy got saved, I'd hear my daddy pray. He couldn't read and write, but he'd pray with those men. And then down at a church called Parker's Memorial Baptist Church down in Richfield. And Charles Goodman was the pastor for a while, and Nelson Wright was there for a while. And there was a place across from Parker's Memorial in the woods that men prayed. And old Brother Cook, old long-legged Brother Cook, probably if Nelson hears this, or some of those guys from back then, they'd remember Brother Cook. His son's a preacher, and he was in the Albemarle tent meeting I did. And I was raised with his boys, one of his boys the same age as I am, went to school together. But his daddy was Mr. Cook, had a big old tall fella, probably 6'5", had long legs and just a real lanky fella. But all those men would meet on Saturday night, sometimes over across from Parker's Memorial in the woods, and pray. And they'd kneel around those old stumps. They had cut off stumps they'd sit on. They'd kneel around those old cut off stumps. And I'd hear them. And old Brother Cook could take a running spell in the woods. He'd get to praying and get to running, and I'd hear him shouting, running through the woods, sound like a coon dog on a trail. I mean, if you didn't know better, you'd think men had gone crazy, that somebody, a lunatic, was running loose in the woods. But he'd hoop and holler in the dark, no flashlights, be running through the woods, wonder he hadn't hit a tree and killed himself. But I'd sit there as a boy and listen to him pray, and I'd hear him say things like, God, if you don't show up Sunday, God, if you don't save so-and-so, God, it's going to take your power. God, let the power fall. God, send revival. And then God started sending revival at our little church, and they started having a Sunday afternoon service of all the churches coming together, Methodists and Baptists and churches from all over the county started meeting on Sunday afternoon. And I remember our little church, sometimes on Sunday afternoon, there'd be 100, 125 people meeting on Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock, meeting to pray and sing and beg God to send revival and save souls, besides Sunday morning and Sunday night. And I saw that as a boy, but I watched them go from meeting to pray and beg God to send revival, till I watched them start meeting behind closed doors in the pastor's office, and the pastor looked at me and said, fellas, what can we do to help our church grow? And they sent them off to conferences and give them books and literature and programs and all types of things that in themselves, I guess, is good and have a purpose. But it took away the necessity of depending upon God to do the work. Things began to change. And now here we are in 2025. Can you believe that? 2025. I remember it seemed like this yesterday. They were saying Y2K, 2000, everything's going to shut down, the Lord's coming. And we stayed up that night, midnight, and I remember my youth pastor and one of the men in the church, my treasurer, they were going to come to my house and they were going to cut my power off and try to get me to thinking something had happened. And I heard about it, they was going to do it. And I was waiting on them. I had my pistol ready and I was going to shoot up in there about 3 or 4 times and scare them enough to make them mess in their britches. And they decided not to do it at the last minute because they know that I was always locked and loaded. And so we laughed about it. But there it was, 2000. Now it's 2025. And I'll be 70 next year. And I just wonder where time's gone. But I miss those times. I do. And writing the book and reading and editing the new book, and especially looking at all these pictures of the tents, the schoolhouses, the gymnasiums. I saw pictures yesterday with hundreds of young people bowing on a gymnasium floor, old white-haired preachers kneeling down working with teenagers with all kinds of rock music and Satanism, little girls mutilated, self-mutilation, their legs and arms all cut up from mutilating themselves. But see them kneel in a gymnasium. I remember at North Surrey High School in Mount Airy, the entire girls softball team got saved, and a lot of other athletes got saved. And that night, on Thursday night, they came in from the ball game, and a lot of them got saved. And they never went back to the bleachers. They just sat down in the floor right there in front of the platform. We had a platform set up on one end of the gym. People were sitting, had chairs set up on the gym floor. Both sides of the bleachers were full, probably 1,500 there. And they never went back to the bleachers. They just sat down on the floor, and those kids started testifying about what God had done, and those girls were still dressed in their softball uniforms, and the whole team just about got saved. And I saw pictures of that. I saw one picture in that group of a busted up set of cassette tapes in the parking lot, and I remember what it was about. There was a boy there that had got saved that night, and he'd come to cause trouble, him and two girls and another boy, and they'd kind of tried to disrupt the service while I was preaching at a North Carver High School in Winston-Salem. And they left, but he stayed. And he got saved that night, and he went out to his car and took all the cassettes in his car of rock music, and he busted them up and left them laying there in the parking lot. And Greg Lentz was working with me, and Greg found it and took pictures of it, and I went out and saw it. And I got a letter months later from the girls that were there that left, and they had been placed in a girls' home, Gary Wagner's girls' home, and they had gotten rebellious and got caught up in Satanism. They had met that night before the service with those two other boys, and they'd met down behind the school at a creek, and they were, hey, Brother Gary Cox, and they were doing incantations trying to cause me to be disrupted from doing the service, and they couldn't get anything accomplished. So they come in the gymnasium and set it far back on the right side up on the top bleachers, and that one boy was standing up and harassing me and hollering and throwing stuff. I had to call him down twice, and finally he and the two girls got up and walked out, but the one boy stayed behind. And these girls wrote me a letter later and told me about this boy. They said, we almost sent him to hell. Said we left and begged him to go with us, but he stayed, and he got saved. And 3 weeks after he got saved, he got killed in a car wreck. And those girls went to his funeral, and they were so upset because they realized not only could he have gone to hell just like that, just that close, how 3 weeks before they were in there trying to disrupt me, and they left, but he stayed, got saved, and now their lives all messed up, and they're in a girls' home, and they'd gotten saved and gotten right with God, but they were writing me to tell me that story I knew nothing about, and just how close that boy came to death. And I saw those pictures, and I looked at that, and so many memories, and I thought, God, the thousands and thousands of miles you've let me travel, it's been worth it all. I'll see that boy in heaven, whoever I don't know who he is. I don't have a clue what his name is. I wouldn't know him if he was alive today and walked up on my porch. But when I get to heaven, he'll meet me somewhere inside the gate, and he'll say, preacher, thank you for preaching to me that night in North Carver High School. I'm the one that had the cassettes busted in the parking lot. I'm the one that died in the car crash 3 weeks later. There's hundreds of stories like that. I could go on all day. This is what Revival Reflections was started for. I started this podcast to do what I'm doing now, to talk about what God's let me see, to hopefully instill in somebody on here to get a burden for revival. If we don't have revival, even though our nation politically, we're all pleased, not all of us, but many of us are pleased at some things that are taking place, and we're thankful that God's given us a little space of grace. But even as good as that sounds, if God doesn't send revival to our nation, we are in desperate trouble spiritually. There's churches that'll have service Sunday that the Holy Ghost will be nowhere around. And preachers, and teachers, and singers will go through the motions just like God's there and never be aware of the fact that He's left them a long time ago. This is what purpose of this. I can't travel like I did. I wish I would give my right arm to be able to load up my wife in the Suburban, pack up for a week, pull into a church or pull into a camp meeting or pull into a tent meeting and stand behind the pulpit and preach till I'm dripping wet, see the altar filled with sinners. I'd give my right arm to be able to do that again. But that's probably not going to happen. But if there's something I say on a podcast may stir some person to pray for revival, or maybe somewhere down the road, some young man seeking God's will for his life may watch this video, this old white-haired preacher, and they may get a burden like God burdened me, and they may decide one day, I think I'll go with God. I think I'll just surrender my life to go with God. Hey, Brother Randy, hope you're doing good, buddy. Brother Gary, if one person is stirred by something I say, causing them to give their lives for the cause of Christ and revival, then it'd be worth it all. But that's what revival's been about, and that's what God's let me see, and I'm just thankful. I'm real nostalgic this week, having gone through and seen all these pictures of so many things. This reminded me of all the places and the faces and the things that's taken place. Most of all the souls. I don't know how many souls have been saved. One of the regrets I have when I started in the ministry, I wish I'd kept a diary. I wish I'd kept a daily diary. I did every message that I preached. I did always write down where I preached it, and if people were saved, I usually wrote down 5 saved or 10 saved beside of that. So I could go back through thousands of messages and come up with thousands of people that have been saved and all the youth crusades. But there's no way of knowing. I mean, when you preach an overseas meeting like in the Philippines and see close to 2,000 people saved in 10 days, and I preach, some years I preached 450 times a year, more than once a day. I preached some years, and they say I preached over 15,000 times, and that's average about 300 times a year. And I did more than that for many years. I was preaching for 350 to 450 times a year, and so many souls saved. Some years there were thousands saved. Some years there were hundreds, but there was always people saved. And I'm thankful for everyone. I've ridden miles and miles and miles and preached to a group of people and see one sinner saved. I remember a couple of years ago, I went out to Kansas to my buddy Billy Krieger's church, and we drove all the way out there, and it's a long drive, and he's got a small church, a good church, but Billy's been faithful, and I try to always help him and encourage him when I can. We drove out there, and I remember that lady, the older lady, and that night she got saved and got it settled. She'd been doubting her salvation, and she got it settled that night for sure. And I told my wife, I said, isn't that wonderful? We'd come all this way, and we're tired, and we're old, and we'd had problems getting out there. We'd had a problem, and not only blew a tire, but we messed up a rim, and the rim was damaged, and there wasn't no rims around there we could get, and we tried to. And some guy got it and took it in the shop and took it apart and beat it and welded it enough to get me to Kansas. And we got to Kansas after stopping the tire wouldn't hold air. He said it probably won't hold air, and we'd go 50 miles, have to stop and get air. And my goodness, it was such a hard time. I said, God, we ever going to get to Council Bluff, Kansas? And we did, Council Grove, Kansas, and we did. And when I got there, I had a place there, and the preacher knew a place, and I called him, told him I need to order a new rim. And they ordered me a new rim, had it brought in, and to put it on, and we were fine, good to go again. But that one lady getting saved made all of that effort. It cost about all my love offering to get out there, and then I spent a large amount of money on the tire and on the rim. And then, we never, a lot of times we went to meetings, and we still do. We go a lot of places. We never, make enough to come home with anything, but that's never been the issue. It's never been about money. It's always been about the one soul. And I heard that song that Greater Vision thinks if just one more soul would walk down the aisle. And that's where I've always tried to be. I never made issue of the size of the church and never made issue of the money. It's always about souls. If just somebody gets saved, there's no price on one soul. So anyway, well, our time's about gone. I apologize again for not dealing with what I came here to deal with. I was going to deal with the first mentioned principle in hermeneutics today, but instead we talked about revival, but I don't apologize for that. I hope that you've been blessed. I've enjoyed sitting here talking to you, and I know you got busy plans today, so get with your family and go eat your 4th of July meal. My wife's going to have spaghetti for us. We're by ourselves today, and just me and her. We're going to eat spaghetti, and I'm going to eat some fresh cantaloupe, and I don't know what we'll have for dessert. She'll come up with something, I guess, and we're going to sit here and just enjoy each other, and I'm going to read a book or something and just kind of stay and just enjoy being home with my wife today. And so we spend all our time together, just she and I. We don't see anybody much except at church, and then our son was over Monday with his family for his birthday, and people are always busy, but we just try to spend our time with each other, enjoy the days we have left, ever how long that is. And I hope you have a wonderful 4th of July. Thank God today for our nation. Thank God for your freedom. Pray for our troops. Pray for our president. Pray for those in authority. Pray for Israel today, for the safety and peace of Israel. And then pray one for another. As Fred Kirby used to say, all we got is each other. And Ralph Jr. used to say, all we got is God and each other. And that's true. That's all we got is God and each other. So pray one for another. I sure do love all of y'all. Hey, James Butcher, hope you're doing good, buddy. Over in Asheboro, I was thinking about you yesterday, and all the people over in Asheboro, and my friends from over that way. I got so many friends, and it just take a lifetime to mention them all. And we'll get together in heaven. We'll get to spend heaven together. We'll talk about old times, and we'll renew old acquaintances with friends we once knew. Song says, I want to stroll over heaven with you. And I do want to stroll over heaven with you if you're not ready to meet the Lord. I hope today you'll trust Him. It's easy. Just call out to Him. Tell Him that you need a Savior. He's there to save you. He'll forgive you, and He'll be your Lord and Master. Well, have a good 4th of July. Happy Independence Day. I love you from my house to your house. We love you. Thank you so much. Consider being a subscriber. Just hit the subscribe button on my Facebook page. It's only 99 cents a month. That'll go toward helping us expand our social media. Check out our Spotify page. I've got a lot of downloads on the Spotify. Check out my YouTube page, Dr. David Harrison, on YouTube. And then my Spotify page is up and running. And then our Facebook page is growing. We've had 300 as of this morning. In the last 7 weeks, we've had 385,000 views in 7 weeks. We're going to hit 500,000 views here pretty quick. And so the Lord's really blessed our social media. And just being a subscriber, 99 cents a month, everybody can not even miss it. Just hit the subscribe button. Everything's secure. And you'll take out 99 cents every month, and it'll go into our account to help take care of us expanding our social media and be a little bit to help do that. And I appreciate it so very much. Well, I love you. God bless you. If the rapture takes place before we meet again, I'll meet you somewhere up above the treetops.